Come on, guys. All here. Welcome back to the Anfield View. The sun is still shining endlessly in the UK at the moment. Hope you're all keeping well. Time to jump straight into really this morning's briefing, really morning update for you guys. Yeah, sort of, I would say yesterday evening there was sort of news, speculation, rumors that, as I say, allegedly. So, how much truth in this you guys can make a judgment on. That Liverpool were essentially happy with the centre back situation, as in they were basically going to make do with Virgil, Xhaka, Leone, Gomez, with a break glass option of essentially Endo and Gravenberch. And I think at that point, I think to some extent, if I could have collapsed on the floor, I probably would have. It's it something sometimes I don't know why we expect anything different. The one thing you could say with FSG, and I probably give them more credit than a lot of people do. So I can never say I don't sort of play really sort of fair across the board. But sometimes some things you hope for something to change, and yet basically they don't really change from who they said they were. The whole money ball, the whole sort of dressed up as sustainability, essentially it is basically based on how they want how they want to invest and what how much they want to invest and really how they want to achieve success essentially. And they really want it's one of these where you can look at Moneyball from a perspective of, oh well, it's accumulation of putting all the right parts together to win as a team. Or you can look at it as basically putting all the cheapest parts together to essentially win on the cheap. Um, and you could, if you're a big advocate of it, you could sit there and say, yeah, well, why if you can win the title spending £5, why win the title spending £100? But the reality is that that's all well and good, but the bottom line is you're not going to win very often if ultimately you're always investing less than their opponents, because basically essentially what it basically means is that you have to constantly overachieve, where basically if they just achieve their level, if other clubs just achieve their level for the amount of money and who they're buying, then ultimately they're going to beat you. Ultimately, it's not rocket science why Real Madrid have won the amount of European Cups that they have. And for a lot of the period, with Jurgen Klopp, we did overachieve. And I think hearing that last night, and look, I take a small grain of truth from it, because history tells me whenever we've had an injury crisis in any position, the one thing we don't tend to do is really invest to either recover that situation, or we don't really do anything. Essentially, we basically just have a philosophy of, well, just make do with what you've got and then rectify at the end of the season. Some people could say, well, that's good, it's not knee jerk. I would sit here and say, look, in season 20, was it 2021, with Reece Williams and Nat Phillips, we spent half the time putting better midfielders that I would class as better defensive midfielders than Endo and Gravenberch in Henderson and Fabinho playing at centre back to try and rescue that situation. And then eventually Jurgen Klopp, and I mean this in all due respect, a well-beaten manager, even he had to admit that that wasn't working. It was a disaster. And then we ended up obviously having to use Phillips and Reece Williams, who basically were just backup squad rotation players. They're not even squad rotation, just backup players randomly in the squad, and that were just never really going to see the light of day when it comes to Liverpool's first team. And they ended up rescuing the situation. It's like, but we got lucky with that. In fairness, the sensible thing would have been to have gone out and got a new centre back, or to have had more depth in the squad at centre back in the first place. And this is the problem with Liverpool, is that We make the same mistakes, same choices over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it's all born out of our philosophy. Ultimately, because our philosophy doesn't change, then we're going to constantly make the same choices and the same mistakes. It's just a reality check for everybody, is that it's all underpinned by our overall philosophy, because we start off with the fact that we feel that anybody can replace anybody at any position within the team apart from striker, pretty much. And even then, we'd probably go back to like the 1990s when people were putting centre backs up at striker in desperation. The problem that we have is that we carry injury prone players that are blatantly injury prone players for way too long. And they end up technically being backup players for about three positions, but equally they're not even available to play one position half the time, let alone to play three. And this situation, obviously when the news, well, how much truth in it, but equally you could sit and say the bottom line is, whether it's just rumor or speculation, let's be honest, how many times have Liverpool actually done this very scenario? I can think of 2020, 2021. I can think of the Stephen Corker year in the January. I can think of about 4 or 5 different seasons out of the last 11 where Liverpool have done this very thing. And a couple of those seasons, we got very, very lucky to get into the Champions League. And sometimes it completely was abject failure. And I just find it I can't even say we're sleepwalking into the iceberg at the top, like the Titanic. I think we're just driving ourselves straight into. We're not sleepwalking. This is not news. We these are calculated decisions by the club. Everything the club's doing at the moment, they know full well what's happening, and they know full well the ramifications of these decisions. And ultimately, I just find it absolutely staggering that anyone can have the belief that Ryan Gravenberch is barely a defensive midfielder. But there's not one person alive that calls him a defensive midfielder. You can call him an all-round midfielder that plays the six, mainly because we're out of our stubbornness. We refuse to go and buy a proper defensive number six. Endo, God rest his soul. Yes, I know in his past has played a bit of a centre back, and even for us, he's played a little bit of centre back. And for Carabao Cup games, I have no issue Endo playing centre back, and for dead rubbers in the Champions League, I've got no issue in playing centre back. And to come on as sub in a game where there's been an emergency injury, for example, then I've got no issue in playing centre back. Where I have an issue in playing centre back is when he's having to play 10 games at centre back in the middle of a Premier League season. And then, the problem that I don't think the club, while they do know this is the problem, is I sit here and say, oh, a problem with the club that they don't understand is they obviously do understand. They're incredibly intelligent. They have all the statistics. They can see. Sometimes you can be too close to a situation. In business, one of the reasons why people bring outside consultants in is to have a view from above, to actually give you a proper analysis of what and a proper view of the picture of what's actually happening, so you make the right strategic decisions to really push forward and make the changes to achieve whatever objectives that you're looking to do. I think sometimes with Liverpool, we're so hell bent on only doing it one way and only doing one philosophy, and you could sit there and say, look, they came in on this. They invested the club on this mantra, and it's their only mantra, and it's their own business model mantra. And many people are sitting there and say, look, they're no different with us as they are with Boston. And Boston, obviously, ultimately, the Red Sox are closer to being their baby than what we are. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're just an investment. And I just find it absolutely I shouldn't be staggered because it essentially is just confirmation of it's just the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. And whilst I tip my hat for them achieving the growth that we've achieved and putting the experts in the commercial side and what they've done, ultimately, whilst we've benefited from that uptick in growth in terms of being able to buy players, etc., and retain players, and I get that, but equally, two things are true. They're not doing it for my benefit. I don't get a share of the sale when Liverpool was sold. At the end of the day, they bought a some people would say distressed asset. I wouldn't go that far. We weren't in relegation territory when they picked us up. We weren't insanely in debt, and the reason we weren't purchased is because we're spending about our life haggling around trying to find the right buyer for the club. There's plenty of people that would have brought the club. Let's not be fooled on that. We were trying to find the right buyer. It's often sort of over dramatized as to our situation. Yes, we did owe money, and yes, the club needed to meet deadlines, but there was probably about 10 to 15 other buyers that would have come in, to invest in the club if it was really getting too close to the wire on that side. And so buying the club for 350 million, yes, with a little bit of debt, not crazy. It wasn't Man United's 1 billion of debt or anything like that. Um, and so flipping that to what, 5 billion, you can do your maths on that one. At the end of the day, they've seen it as an amazing investment, and it was. And they're going to get the rewards from it financially. And so, yeah, sure, we benefited more by them attracting Jurgen Klopp and making good decisions on that, and by making astute signings and things. And yes, we've invested money, but so we should. We're an absolute behemoth of a football club. We're a football club that is in the top six. You've got your Real Madrid, your Barcelona, us, Man United, Bayern Munich. All on that side, and it's a situation that we are own. When people talk about our investment, we're hardly setting the like fantastic. Arsenal out. I put a video up yesterday. That Arsenal outspent us last year. Nobody ever talks about it because nobody cares. Everyone's obsessed with the gross figure. Nobody cares about the net figure. And the reason I put this up today was I sat there last night and then I slept on it. So I'll send a video. I was like, no, I'll sort of think over it. No, but I sat there and thought, surely not again. Not again. Are we really at that position where we're putting Gravenberch, who's not even remotely close to being a competent centre back, playing as a centre back? Endo, I'm not as distressed in, but equally, come on. It really is one of these. I don't know. It's literally like we'll do anything to stop ourselves buying any extra depth or basically spending any extra money. Be great to hear what your thoughts are, guys. What are your thoughts in terms of the Liverpool defensive situation? I'm of the opinion that we constantly go in each season. For a long time, we were going in with 4 centre backs. Now we're down to 3 centre backs. We've got Jacques Leone and Virgil. They'll argue that Joe Gomez is the 4th. I'll argue that Joe Gomez is more of a right back than he is a centre back these days. And frankly, I don't think you. Personally, I can't class Joe Gomez in the squad because he's never fit. The club do. That's the problem. The club class Joe Gomez as the 4th centre back. They then class Endo as the 5th centre back, and they class Gravenberch as the 6th centre back. So in their mind, they think we've got six centre backs. Wherein the actual truth is, Gravenberch is not a defensive midfielder, and he's not a centre back. Scrap that one off the table and shove that one straight in the bin. Gravenberch is less of a centre back than what Jordan Henderson would have been. And Fabinho, he doesn't even have anywhere near the defensive characteristics of those 2 players. And they were dreadful, when they played in that position for us. And so shove Gravenberch's idea of playing at centre back straight in the bin right now. So that's just that that philosophy and that idea is just absolutely astounding to me. You know, and for, look, we've got a lot of knowledgeable people, but they're very. It's literally like saying my aunt is my uncle. There is no way in the world that Gravenberch can ever play centre back for us. There's not. I'm sorry. That baffles me. I mean, I try to get my head around him playing defence. You know, the idea of him being a number six, although he's not proper number six, is like, oh, he's a defence. No, he's not a defensive midfielder. We just put him in that position and hope he can pull it off. And then you're in a situation where it's okay, so Gravenberch is six. Endo, Endo for me is like, it's just like, as I explained it a minute ago. Look, if you want to use him for a bit of Carabao Cup, the odd game here and there, I get it. He's a break glass option for like one game. But seriously, he can't be classed. So then you got Joe Gomez at four, who's basically never fit. Surely the club, you know, we love to wheel out how genius we are with statistics, yet when it comes to the statistics on our fitness record, everyone seems to basically just ignore it. Is that how is it possible that we laud ourselves on statistics when it comes to when deals go right? Yeah, when it comes to analysing how the players in the squad that basically are never fit, then we just tend to just gloss over it. Why? Because it costs us money to replace them. And my problem within the squad is that you need to ignore the fact that Gomez is there and Endo is a break glass option. And then the truth is we have three centre backs. That is the reality of the Liverpool situation. We have three centre backs, and two of those are youngsters. We have one. The real truth of Liverpool's situation at centre back is we have one world class centre back. We have two youngsters. I don't care if you bought them for 400 million. We have two youngsters that are unproven in the Premier League. One of them is gonna partner Virgil. We have Joe Gomez, who's basically never fit. It's not his fault. We love him. We love his dedication. He's never fit. That's proven. It's a trend. I work in marketing. It's a statistical trend. We can all predict how many injuries Joe Gomez is going to have and pretty much how many games he's going to have each year. Endo has injury problems and he's old and he's small. And look, he's for the odd game. I mean, I'm sitting here now, like, you know, the reality is we have one senior centre back, two young centre backs. Yeah, they cost a lot of money, but who knows what they're going to equal. We have one player that's never fit in Joe Gomez. We have one player in Endo that is really just for the Carabao Cup games, and Gravenberch is not even remotely an option. And so it'd be great to hear what you think on this scenario, guys, because we're stuck in a world at the moment where Liverpool are just making the same mistakes over and over and over and over, and we just never learn. And why, as fans, we get so annoyed is because doing the same thing over and over is usually classed as insanity, and that's not me. That's just my opinion on making mistakes. It's not me sort of casting aspersions on the club. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it just all comes back from the philosophy. It really does. It comes back from the money ball philosophy. And yeah, all right, we appreciate getting more out of less. We appreciate trying to achieve things on a certain budget and all these different things. But if you really, 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 really only have to do it at such a small level, then you're in the wrong game. And Jurgen Klopp managed to turn sort of water into wine, you know, when it came to that, and even he came a cropper with this situation with the defence. And it's just how many times do we have to see it? How many times? I don't think we've ever had depth in defence ever, and it's just a philosophy that they have. It's not even a. It's not. It shouldn't surprise me, but every single time this scenario comes up, like once every 3 years, I keep beating my head against the wall. It's like, are you serious? Are we never going to learn? And the reality is, no, we're never going to learn. Do you know why? Because it's our philosophy. And until such time as our philosophy changes, or you always see the errors in that philosophy, then we're never ever going to stop doing the same thing. it's just a reality check, isn't it, really, guys? And I hate to be the one that says it, but equally is that it is the reason we don't have depth half the time is born out of our philosophy. It's born of how we want it. A lot of the things we do at Liverpool is through choice. We spend the amount of money through choice. We don't spend, above and beyond through choice. Last summer, God knows, how many people need to shove that one down our throats every minute of every day. You'd have thought we'd have spent like £1 billion net. We end up spending net less than Arsenal, and yet everyone talks about our summer as if we spent 600 million net. Well, we didn't. It's irrelevant spending 600 million gross if you only spend 150 million net. And that is the problem with where we are fundamentally at now. And the sheer thought of the fact that we haven't even started the season and we're knowingly walking straight into this season with that defensive crisis baffles me. I mean, at least in 2021, you couldn't predict the injuries that were coming. We're in August now. We know exactly the situation in our defence. At the moment, our right back is probably going to be Curtis Jones or Soblazai or Calvin Ramsey. No word of a lie. It just honestly it leaves me speechless to some extent. I could scream really. It is absolutely maddening how we just constantly rinse and repeat the same thing once every 3 years, and it's just it's a stubbornness. And some people say, look, the model is the model, and the model brings good, and the model brings bad. And look, I understand that, and probably the definition of insanity is me expecting them to do something different. And it probably is. So I have to be critical of myself and say, like, why am I expecting something different when it's just who they are? They in fairness, you have to say it. They walked in and said they were going to operate it one way, and it's the money ball. And it's their approach, and you can say, oh, it's sustainable. Let's be honest. Well, Liverpool have got record turnovers. They got record sponsorship. They got record um, revenue from shirt sales, from sponsors, from corporate boxing, from attendance records, and everything along those lines. So Liverpool aren't in that. Liverpool are miles ahead of sustainable model. Jesus, Liverpool are an absolute conglomerate of a club right now. And yeah, I mean, we've got what, 4 weeks left. Are we going to buy the centre back? Are we going to buy a right back? Are we ever going to get Barcola over the line? Are we going to have a backup to the striker? Answers on a postcard, really, guys. I don't doubt the club isn't looking at certain things, but I find it absolutely crazy that they can think that going into the season, hoping that Endo and Gravenberch are the temporary solution. We could be 6 games down and lose 4 of the first 6 because of that, and then be out of any chance of a title challenge and be up against it for the top 4 straight away. It's hardly supporting the manager, is it? It's the exact opposite. I really do. I feel sorry for Iriola. I really feel sorry for Iriola. So far, we've done nothing for him. And yes, we got Xhaka, we lost Canate, so we're worse off. I mean, whatever you think of Canate's a proven international. Xhaka's not yet. Xhaka's a potentially good youngster that's cost a lot of money, yeah, but he's still not at the level of Canate. So we've got Xhaka, we've lost Canate, so we're worse off in that respect. Because make no bones, if Canate was here now, he'd be starting ahead of him. So we're worse off. Leone, yes, is a youngster once again, unproven in the Premier League. He's had one half of a good game in the Carabao Cup, and so we're walking in without a proven right back. We're walking in without any real senior partnership for Virgil. We've got Simicast now as backup to Kirkes when that was at least a stronger position with Robertson. Jones looks like he's probably going to head for the exit, which means we lose cover in midfield. We lose cover at right back as well. And I know he stunk up the joint in the last friendly game, but equally, even if you don't want him playing in the first team all the time, he's great cover at right back in midfield. Heaven knows what we're going to do with the striker situation. It looks like it just can only be Gakpo and Isak in rotation. Could you imagine if we picked up a small niggle, even a small niggle to Isak? We could be sat here for weeks on end with Gakpo being the only striker. It's absolutely insane. You think before last summer we had 5 strikers, and I know, God rest his soul, nobody can foresee obviously the tragedy of Jota, and I get that. But we've sold Nunes, we've sold Diaz. The great thing about Nunes is that he could play off the wing and strike. The great thing about Diaz, he could play off the wing and strike. And you can't ask Nunes to play as a striker. He's not a player who can do that. And Chiesa can't either. So it'd be great to hear your thoughts, guys. Just a quick morning briefing for you. As I say, the rumour mill last night was very much like Liverpool going to sort of stay with what they've got at the centre back position. I don't think they have a choice but to buy right back. I mean, that would just be that even for them, that would be taking it beyond belief to even think that we can fudge our way through that fiasco. The very fact we have no idea when Bradley's going to be fit and if he can stay fit. And Joe Gomez, we know, can't be fit and stay fit. And as you got Frimpong. Frimpong's not good enough at right back, but what they think and what we think is usually 2 different things, isn't it? As I say, guys, it is a situation where ultimately most of what Liverpool do is through choice, whether it's the amount of money that they invest, whether it's the philosophy that they do, whether it's how they react to situations. And a bit of guys, like it's circumstances. Yeah, but equally, we put ourselves in circumstances. We choose to keep injury-prone players. We choose not to have a big enough squad. Why don't we have a big enough squad? People, it's to bring for the youth. No, it's not. We at the end of the day, yes, we want youth to come through mainly because it's cheaper for the club. Let's be honest. Look, I want youth to come through because I want the next superstar. But equally, it's one of these situations that, obviously I understand people want the sort of cultural element within the team. Somebody that's local that's playing for the team, really instills the heart, and the philosophy and what it means to play for Liverpool. I get all those factors, and I love having obviously a few Liverpool sort of born players, in the team as well. But they've got to be on the team on merit, not just because they were born there. And yeah, what can you do, guys? And I think it's one that every single time these same things happen over and over and over again, we all lose our brain. And yet, ultimately, it's predictable as the day is long, isn't it? Because it is just all born out of the philosophy. The philosophy is the Moneyball scenario where you literally try and get, you put X amount of budget, whether that's enough to, isn't the budget we put down isn't reverse engineered, on what's required to achieve success. It is reverse engineered on what we're prepared to spend. That's the thing, is most things in business, you would sit there and say, okay, we're looking to achieve X. Okay, what's required to achieve X? It's going to cost you this. The difference is with us, it's going to cost you this. No, scrap that out of the way. Our budget, or not even budget, what we're prepared to spend is this. How are we going to? Then they work their way back. Oh, how are we going to achieve this? Okay, well, we'll get no right. We'll hold on. What can we do? We'll have 3 centre backs instead of 4 centre backs, or 4 centre backs instead of 5 centre backs. Or hold on, we'll have 3 centre backs, but if we have one that can work, players right back in the centre back, that saves us one here. And this is what we do. It literally is like watching the Moneyball film. I don't know if you guys have watched it. When you watch the Moneyball film and they're literally saying, oh, yeah, but we could have that person who contributes these runs, even, and that person gets some base, and this person gets some base, and this person does this. And the accumulation of all of it equals, is where they go to get success. That's all well and good when everything works perfectly. When it doesn't work perfectly, it looks like an absolute disaster. Do you know what I mean? It's one of those situations you go, yeah, that approach, which is essentially doing on a much, much cheaper model, is this? It's really a cheap approach. Yeah, that cheap approach, when it works like a dream, sure, makes you look like geniuses. When it works awful, would get most teams relegated. I'm not look, Liverpool aren't doing it to the levels of obviously, smaller teams, so we're not going to get relegated. But I'm just saying is that look, ultimately when it works well, everyone thinks we're phenomenal. But Jurgen Klopp also, yeah, we did turn, Robertson into a genius. We did turn Salah into a world star. We did turn, a free and Matip, etc. So I get it. The end list goes on, but it's been a while now since we've actually got anybody for on a free transfer or 7 million or even 50 million and turn them into a world superstar. When was the last time we did that? Great to hear your thoughts, guys. Speak to you more soon.